Hey y'all, and welcome to Geospatial Experiences. I'm your host, Melissa Mayo, and I'm an Esri engineer on the product team. This podcast focuses on the application of geographic information. Let's go on a journey together with some of my amazing coworkers, along with Esri customers, partners, and distributors who are doing really cool work in the field of GIS.
So today, Geospatial Experiences, the tables are turned. And I have with me today, well, first off, my name is Ramey Myers. I'm the product manager for the utility network, and usually I'm behind the scenes on this podcast. But today I'm hosting, and we have our guest, Melissa Mayo. Melissa, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So you are a principal product engineer on the geodata and utility team. And this is your first year with Esri.
It is.
And you've been the host of the Geospatial Experience podcast through the last 15 weeks.
Yes, I have been.
How's it been?
It's been amazing. I've had such a good time talking to everybody, having these conversations. When I thought about it originally and thought that this podcast would be something that would be a good idea and could be useful and is something that was really, really needed, I thought it would be amazing to be able to talk to different people and capture those conversations, but it's really surpassed my expectations. It's exceeded expectations, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I've learned so much from everybody that I've talked to, even the ones that I thought I knew really well. I met some new friends along the way. That's been super fun. And just the whole experience has been just amazing. I don't know what other word to say. It's just been amazing.
So this was an idea that came from a late night on a road trip.
Yep.
And I was really excited about it because I saw how our customers were changing. And I think that we're in a situation now with GIS being used by so many people. It's really good to showcase how everybody comes to geospatial experiences from different places. What were some of the high points of those interviews?
Their journeys were just all so different. No two people found their way to GIS the same way. It was just so diverse in how they were exposed and how they, made their way. We even introduced someone on the podcast this season to GIS and kind of what we do and what Esri does. So we brought a new friend into the fold as far as that's concerned when we met with McKees at the zoo. So that was amazing. But it was just I don't know. I can't pick favorites now, Remy. But
I'm not asking.
Yeah.
I think
I'm on the hot seat. You're making me nervous. Now I see why everybody's been squirming.
Good. I'm glad you're nervous. You should be nervous. So I anticipated some very interesting stories about people, places, and things. And I knew that passion would be a common denominator across everybody we talk to, because everybody who gets into this, including our friend McKees at the zoo, even though he doesn't have formal training and he's got that intellectual curiosity that I think makes him well suited in this community. I thought it was a great interview, by the way.
Thanks. I thought it was fun.
Complete with a cameo by our guest lion,
yes,
Josh.
Right? Everybody had such good insight, though. Like when they were chatting and talking. I don't know, maybe stealing your thunder.
No,
I don't know where you're headed.
No, go for it.
But I just, every single conversation we had, and some of the people on here I've known for years. Some of the people are newer acquaintances for me. Some of them go back to my EMA days even, So everybody just had amazing insight that no matter how well I knew them, they still came out with something that I was like, that is golden, that is so good. And I just felt like it needed to be out here for other people to partake as well. People left us with such good recommendations and thoughts and suggestions. I mean, right now I'm thinking about Hussein with telling everybody to stay curious and really go after those things that, if you're interested, dive in, explore, and don't stop learning, essentially. That came up quite a bit through the season. And it was something I didn't necessarily expect out of Hussein. I don't know why. I just hadn't gotten to know him that well. Didn't know him well enough to expect that, but that was super great. Sarah, I'm thinking about Sarah too. She was so fun, and her journalism background really came out so much. And I didn't expect that. I hadn't thought about that. I guess I hadn't put the pieces together, for what she does with EOS. I don't know. There were so many good conversations. I'm thinking about Amit as well, our friend at RMSI. When I was thinking about the podcast and really talking with you about it, that episode with Amit really is kind of the best example of what I originally envisioned. He was so concise and so direct, but really thoughtful about his answers. He knew what he wanted to say, and he had really good responses that were so useful and so resonating. I don't know. They just really, they registered for me. But we moved through them really quickly, and we got a lot of great content out of him. And it was great. He was so good. But that doesn't mean that I didn't really love the other episodes that were longer and we got to chat and, take a little bit more time. I think Amit just spends enough time speaking to, upper level directors and managers and executives, and then he's on the floor at the conferences, and so he has to get his message through really concisely and really quickly, where some of the rest of us, we have the liberties to take our time chatting through things and work our way through that journey. And so I've loved that experience too. I mean, when I was thinking about it originally, Amit's episode is the best example for, in my mind, what I envisioned it, but the rest of them are great too, and they bring their own flair and their own little spiciness to it too. I mean, everybody has their fun personalities, but I always love talking to Amit. And oh gosh, I'm looking at the list, and every time I'm looking at the list of people we had on here, I think about something else that was great and amazing. I can't not mention James, because James is a new friend, and I have a sticky note now because of my conversation with James, and I can't wait to hang out with James in person. He's just so full of energy. He's just so positive. And he thinks, he just thinks about he spends a lot of time thinking about what he can do to help his customers and how he can make their experience better. And his quote about grow like a plant, I had to have it on a Post-it note because I loved it so much. Was that not just amazing when he came out with that?
Absolutely. I've heard be like water. That's the first time I've heard grow like a plant, and absolutely loved it. I love the earth sciences spin that the podcast took, because we've had 3 or 4 really strong earth science backgrounds. I thought Diana's, conversation on her coming from a biology background and going into teaching, we saw several common teaching, threads too get exposed. But it was really intriguing for me. I knew it wasn't going to be all about geography, but we had some really heavy hitters in geography.
We did. I feel like we kind of ran the gamut. Like we had people from all over.
Yeah, we had some great pipeline discussions with Jess and Mohan, and Crawford, when we interviewed Dave. It really kind of got me going back to my grad school days and how much I really enjoyed theory and stuff.
I know what I love too about Dave's was just the emphasis he put on the foundational and fundamental experiences that people have and how that can have such an influence later on. When he was a kid, he got interested very early in maps and cartography and geography and all of that, and it has carried him through. But he had teachers when he was in younger grade levels, and his dad as well being a teacher too. Just they all played into kind of fueling that fire and feeding that, and helped him stay interested and helped facilitate him being interested. And it just makes me think about when we have teachers and we have people out there who are teaching and leading the young people, they probably don't always think about whether or not they're actually making a difference, whether they're leaving an impact, whether what they're doing day to day, because they have a very thankless job, But it kind of clicked for me that it does matter, and they do register, and it does resonate. And a lot of times we can remember those teachers that we had that weren't so amazing, but we can definitely remember the ones that really left a good impact, the ones that really spent time with us and really helped, find our interest and find our passions and helped, encourage us in those areas. It's just so important. And I'm so appreciative to his teachers and his dad that did, because he's amazing. I can't imagine Esri without Dave. I mean, I can't imagine this team without Dave. He's been phenomenal.
Speaking of making a difference, how amazing was Xander?
Oh, I know.
What a story.
Oh, gosh, yes. I loved Xander's story. He found his wife. He found GIS. It was great.
Once you go, you can't go back.
I know. Once you go to Columbia, you get married. Once you find GIS, you can't leave. Xander was phenomenal.
He was amazing. But it was a lot of fun with how it laid out. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate how you built the lineup.
Oh, thanks.
Because I think the order of progression of the podcasts, I think, are really going to resonate. We've definitely got some heavy hitters, and
I hope so.
Look forward to talking to you a little bit later in this podcast about season 2.
Okay, yes. I wanted to make sure we had a really good mix. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to have a good mix between Esri people, giving some of them kind of behind the scenes, or giving people a behind the scenes view into some of our Esri friends and kind of what goes on that they might not, typically be exposed to. And we have some amazing partners that, we have really good connections with and have, they do amazing things. And so I think it's great to be able to highlight them. TJ, she's so fun. She's just great for UDC, and they do such good work as well. But then we needed, I wanted the distributors to have an opportunity. That's how we brought in Xander, and be able to kind of explain that process to everybody and understand a little bit more about how distributors work. And then, of course, we needed our customers. We needed to kind of show the customer face and the customer experience as well. And another conversation that I really enjoyed was with Mark. That's another one that is from, going back in the way back for me. He and I were counterparts between Mississippi and Alabama EMAs and GIS, and we just kept in touch. And we both moved into the utility space, and now I'm here. But really getting those customer stories was fun too, because it's interesting to hear their feedback and their experiences and kind of how things are going for them, and get connected and touch base with them in that space too. So I don't know, I just wanted that well-rounded kind of all-around approach, and I wanted to spread across different disciplines. I didn't want it to just be a utility focused one, because we do a lot of utility work, and it would be really easy for us to kind of stay in that space. But my background is varied and diverse, and we have people all over that we know. And then the more people I met at Esri, I mean, there's just amazing people there, just so interesting and smart, and just do such cool stuff. So I just wanted to be able to, talk. I want to talk to everybody, Raimi.
I love your energy, and I think you do it well. I think you did a really good job of making people comfortable. I think Mark's podcast was a great example of that. It was his first podcast. Mm-hmm. He wasn't sure how it would work. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I didn't want his to end.
I know, it was good.
It was such a great conversation. But, we've touched on our guests. Mm-hmm. It's time to touch on you a little bit.
Do we have to?
We have to. Tell us about where you came from. I mean, I know you've got an education background, and what's your geospatial experience, Melissa?
Well, my undergrad experience is in geography. I went to Jacksonville State University here in Jacksonville, Alabama for my undergrad, and I loved it. That's how I found geography and GIS and all the fun things. I took a geology class there, actually, and the geology classes were in with the geography department, and my teacher was amazing, and I changed my major from business over to geography, minored out of business, went ahead and did that, since I had classes, minored out, but still felt like it was important to have that background as well. But I just loved the geography topics, and so switched over and finished that, then went to the University of Alabama for grad school. So I had my master's from there, and then I went out into the working world. I worked at the West Alabama Planning Commission first, right after college. And I also taught at Samford University for a couple of semesters. So I taught in their geography program. But from the Planning Commission, while I was there, I did a waterline mapping project. So we were mapping water lines in rural counties to make sure that they had their systems captured in GIS. From there, I moved to the state and worked for the Alabama Emergency Management Agency. I was their GIS specialist. So I was there for quite a while, like 7 or 8 years, and did all the mapping during disasters and tornadoes and hurricanes and winter storms, all the stuff. That was just an amazing experience. We worked a particularly large event that everybody knows as April 27th, 2011. And it was, just really devastating for the state. You've probably heard Remy and I, mention it as we go through the episodes. And I was the GIS person at the state EMA for that. So I helped coordinate from federal resources, state resources, local resources, made sure we had the geospatial resources that we needed to be able to respond properly. And then from there, you hired me at Alabama Power to come into the transmission team. And then you ran away and moved over to the Economic Development Group. And shortly after you left, I was promoted to be the supervisor. I was a team leader and then eventually became the supervisor for the transmission GIS team. And I was there with that team the whole time I was there. And then from there, I've been at Esri now since last fall. So that's my geospatial journey.
And what a journey it is. Yeah,
it is.
I saw you during the 2011 tornado event. Now, I'm always the guy that'll sit in the back of the room. I'm never going to, well, sometimes I'm bombastic, but not in situations like that. You were really a rock star during that event. And you were foolish enough to apply for the job. I just wasn't going to let you go when you did it.
I know, right? Well, I'm glad you didn't.
But what an amazing journey.
Yeah, it's been great. I feel like it's really prepared me well for my role here at Esri, and has, just moving through those different areas, I learned things in everywhere I've worked and every scenario I've been in. And it's been an amazing journey through, from going to school and finding geography and, picking up GIS along the way and making a career out of it. But like I said, I just feel like the variety of background and experiences that I've had have suited me well for my role here and for this podcast too. I feel like I have a different perspective than a lot of people, when they're looking at how are we going to build this out and how are we going to do this. So I know you've loved to find out that I was in journalism when I was in, middle school and high school, and, I was on the yearbook and newspaper staff. And so that I think has helped me as well as we've been prepping and putting this together, and just the attention to detail and layouts and how things should look and how things should fall and just all of that. It's kind of coming back to me, and I'm remembering how much I enjoyed it. I was the newspaper editor at one point and the yearbook editor my senior year, and had kind of walked away from all that. But I've really enjoyed getting back into that mode as we've been working on this podcast.
I think it reflects well. I really do. The other thing that I've always noticed with you about your career, I think you love the technology, but you're much more about the people. Mm-hmm. You really are one of the best that I have run across at putting people in a position to not only succeed and grow.
Well, thanks.
And, I think it's a reflection of the teams that you've worked with, the people that you've worked with in the past. And it's a reflection of your passion, in this podcast. I think your enthusiasm absolutely, for somebody who's listened to every episode multiple times, you really bring out the best in people, and it's appreciated. I just wanted you to know that.
Well, thank you so much. I wanted to make it a good experience for everybody.
I think it's a kind of like what we said. I think it's an experience that's needed out there, that people need to understand that there's no one path to GIS. Everybody comes at it from a different perspective, and everybody has different ways of solving problems.
They really do.
So I'd like to touch on your academic background and actually a little bit about your certification as well.
Okay.
You mentioned that you've got a geography background in grad school. How influential is that on your day-to-day work as a geographer for Esri?
Well, I guess I would say between undergrad and grad school, having gone through those formal education programs, I guess is a good way of putting it. That builds those foundations for you to utilize and go forward with when you get into your real job, when you get into the working world. I feel like they gave me the solid foundations. They exposed me to things that, how do we do this? How do we work through labs, and what are some use cases? But when you really get into the thick of things, when you really get on site, that's, I feel like, when you really start putting more of the pieces of the puzzle together, when you start going, okay, I learned how this tool works, or I learned how to do this thing, but now I have to apply it, and now I have to put it into practice, and that becomes a little bit different. You have to kind of broaden your thought processes. You have to broaden and expand your knowledge. You have to keep learning. You really have to keep learning. But then for Esri and being here on the job, I have that experience. I have the educational background, and so I can communicate, I can converse, I can talk about things with other people who have that background. But I've also worked out in the world at multiple places, like we've talked about. And so if someone doesn't have that background, I can have those conversations as well. So I feel like it helps me be relatable across the board. I'm not sure if that's where you were going with that, but
is. There's that, and I think your focus is always about the people too, and I think it's really unique, because I'm a geek and I can get absorbed with myself. I can get absorbed in a theory, but I think that your perspective with people really is kind of what we used to call an army, a force multiplier. You make everybody around you better because you're focused on bringing out the best in people. And I just appreciate it. Speaking of bringing out the best, we've talked over the years about certifications.
Mm-hmm.
And you were actually one of the first GISP people I've ever met. You were very early on in the certification process.
I didn't realize I was that early into it, but I was. So yeah, when you and I got talking about it, we got to looking back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that now? Is it still as relevant as it was? Do you think it's for somebody who's getting in the field?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a good path?
Well, I think so. I mean, I've kept mine up. I've kept mine current. I've just always felt like, that is one of the ways our industry has of showing, and I'm trying to think about my words here. I didn't get the questions in advance, so I'm trying to think my way through this. Other industries and other areas have technical certifications that basically validate, okay, this person knows their stuff, but they're also they've proven that they can utilize it, and they've proven that they can do it in the world, out in the world. It's not just a degree, so you're moving beyond just having the piece of paper out of school. You have to put a lot of work into it too, that goes into your profile and your portfolio, when you submit and apply for your GISP. So you have to show that you're active in the GIS community and in the GIS space, and that you have so much work experience, and that you do, different things. It can be a range of, presentations to papers published. There's lots of stuff that you can get credit for that go toward your GISP. And I feel like because of the amalgamation of things that go into it, it's not just, okay, I'm educated or I can pass a test in it. You have these other parts and pieces too to make you and prove that you're active in our community, and that you're having to build our community up, and that you're trying to make things better for other people, and you're trying to be a presence, I guess, is a good way of putting it. I think it's important from all of those angles too. It's beyond just, I have the education, I have the certification. Now it's, okay, I have X number of years of experience in it. I'm doing these things. I'm presenting. I am, writing papers, or I'm doing whatever it is. And so you're showing that you're giving back to the community too by having this GISP. And it certifies you, that, hey, you're able to hang in there with your peers. You're able to, do things on the same level as your peers are. And there's this overarching group that have certified you that what you've done does align and does line up. So, engineers have the PE, and, different groups and different industries have different certifications that are important to them. Accountants have them, just all sorts of different ones. So for us, that's kind of that authoritative certification. So I think it's important. So.
I think it's a great demonstration of competency. It really is. It is something, if you are coming out of college, you're coming out of grad school, it's worth it, the effort to pursue. Definitely some of the most respected people in GIS carry that GISP moniker. So if you've got the opportunity to look into it, it's worth it. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
So kind of staying on that educational track, I personally love how diverse GIS learning is in all our universities and college systems. What are your thoughts in terms of not being a student, but being an educator? Can you tell us a little bit about your education background? And
as far as being an instructor or being a teacher? Okay. Well, I taught at Samford University in their geography program. I just taught for a couple of semesters for them. Their main primary geography teacher at the time went to London and to their sister campus, and so they just needed someone to backfill. And that was interesting. That was a really good experience. I wanted to have that opportunity because I always thought down the line, once I finally, retire, what am I going to do with myself? And so I kind of thought that adjunct teaching in my retirement years might be something that I'd like to do. So I kind of wanted to test the waters with that. And then a few years ago, I guess it was 2019, a colleague of mine from Alabama EMA who has moved on since to earn his PhD and is at Lander University, he reached out to me because he's running the master's program there for emergency management, and he wanted me to come and basically teach. So he wanted to know if I was interested in teaching some of their electives, and I was, and so I built out a couple of electives, and I've been teaching there for them remotely ever since. And so that's been a really interesting experience because you're getting to see the differences in not only how the university works when you're a student, but you're getting to see how the university works when you're on the instructor side of it. Even remotely as an adjunct, there's certain things I have to do. There's certain things that I have to do just like the rest of the professors have to do. Now there's plenty of things that they do that I don't, but it's just interesting to interact with the students and think back and go, okay, I probably got on my instructor's last nerve with XYZ, but that's okay. I try to have patience with it, and I mean, we have some really good students in the program. They're very interested. They're very, engaged. They want to reach out, and I try to make sure they know that I have an open door, remote open door policy for them to reach out and check in with me or ask questions or anything. But it's interesting to see because I've also gone back and I went back while I was at the power company and got my MBA. I went through the University of North Alabama for that program. And so, I've been to several universities, so I've seen how several of them operate as a student. And just going in and, being an adjunct and doing that part-time as well just gives me the insight on the flip side of the coin, I guess. It's interesting. And I try to expose them to GIS too. So even though they're in the emergency management space, emergency management agencies obviously hire GIS people. Like I've mentioned earlier in the season, we talked to Mark. Of course, that was one of my jobs, one of the most significant jobs I've had as far as learning and experience and just so many things. So it's great for these people that are going through the program to be aware of GIS and be able to communicate so that when they get there and they need to talk to their GIS person, they know what the GIS person's saying. They know what they can do. They have some exposure to it. And they can see some examples of what GIS can do for them. So when they're there, if they're in a planning group or if they're in the response and recovery group, they're going to have some experience and some exposure to GIS and know what to ask for better than if, they hadn't gone through the classes with me where I can, kind of give them that insight and give them that exposure. So,
yeah, I think the diversity of academic learning at the university and collegiate level is just really intriguing.
Oh yeah, because you can go through different programs and people come out with completely different experiences.
Yeah.
I mean, Some people are going to come out with a much heavier theory. Their education is going to be much more focused on that. Some people are going to come out much more technical than others. It just really kind of depends on how the programs are structured too. Some of the programs are just more geared for planners. Some of them are more geared more in the GIS avenue. So it is really interesting though to look at the differences, and it's important for someone when you're considering universities and considering where you're going to go to school for this. What do you want to get out of it? Are you going for just a GIS certificate where you're going to take 6 classes and, it's just kind of an addendum to whatever your degree is? Or are you going to go for a minor? Are you going to go and major in it? Are you going for grad school? Are you focusing in physical geography and you want to be, heavily into geomorphology and things like that? Or do you really want to focus on GIS and you're going to take a heavy load of those technical classes? So it's really important to look at those offerings and really communicate with the people in the department and see, are you going to be able to get the classes that you want? Are you going to be able to, are they offered regularly enough for you? Are you going to be able to really get out of the experience what you hope when you move forward and you sign up for it? So I don't know, maybe did I cover what you wanted? Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that. So staying in academics, you really get to influence these students as they prepare themselves for the workforce. What is your recommendation as you start getting within a year of graduation, you're starting to go out and look for jobs? How can students better prepare themselves for the reality of what a career in GIS is like?
Well, I would 100% say if you can find an internship, if you can do an internship while you're in school, and I would even go so far as to say, a lot of people really want to look for paid internships, and those are the only ones they want to, look into. But if you can get one where you're getting class credit for it and you're not necessarily getting paid, but you're getting an amazing experience and just a really great opportunity, to do this work and get exposure in the field, especially if it's in a field you think you might want to go into. So if you think you want to be a planner, find an internship at a planning commission. I actually started as an intern after college at the planning commission and then was hired on full time after that. So, it was a great opportunity to kind of see what that felt like and what that work would be like. If you think you're, interested in any particular field, whatever it is in the geographical space, geology space, GIS space, whatever it is, try to find an internship while you're there and spend your time doing that. And then spend your free time exploring with the software. I know it's much more fun to go out and have a good time while you're on campus and go and do your intramural activities or go, hiking or do whatever it is that you want to do. And I'm not saying don't do those things either. Man, I wish I would have gone back and spent some extra time in the lab instead of going in, getting my lab done and getting out, and it's just difference in, mindset and experience and exposure, and had other things going on and different classes. So yeah, did I answer your question? Did I ramble? Okay.
You did. So you really can't get enough hands-on experience.
You can't.
And if nothing else, if you've got nothing else to study, one of my favorite big data sets to observe are the census data sets, where you could look at trends and patterns in demographics or populations. And I talked a little bit about that, but cutting your teeth on those sorts of data sets and being able to manipulate them or derive visualizations or analytics, I think that's the backbone of what you're going to do throughout your GIS career. And the more you could do it in a lab where you don't have the cost of the software, you don't have the pressure of being paid to deliver.
Well, and if you break it,
pressure.
Yeah, if you break it, there's usually lab TAs that can fix it for you.
Yeah.
Versus if you break it on the job, it's either IT's fixing it or you're fixing it, depending on,
And neither one of those are a great experience.
Neither one of those are a great experience. I was thinking about that too. You were mentioning while you're in the lab and you have access to the software, and there's a lot of amazing data that's available out there for free. Being able to get out and explore and figure out where that data is and be able to utilize it and know what to do with it before you leave school and when you walk onto the job, and you already know how to access a lot of the data sets that are freely available out there. And then you're thinking about, okay, how do I apply this into the industry that I've been hired into? So if you can take some of that data that's, sitting out there, it's waiting for somebody to use it, And you can go, okay, I've been hired into a utility, or I've been hired into an emergency management agency, or I've been hired into this biology firm, or, engineering group, or whatever it is. And you can go, wait, I know where that weather data is, or I know where fill in the blank data, whatever the data is, fill in the blank. And you know how to get it and use it and put it to use and apply it to what they're doing. That makes you invaluable.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's golden right there.
It's a big part of your career.
Yeah. So the more of that prep work you can do before you ever walk off campus with that diploma, that's just, you're just really benefiting yourself.
So you've just transitioned from being one of Esri's spotlight customers. You were constantly speaking and presenting at conferences. You had a very high profile. You were used a lot in webinars. And this past year, you transitioned. You're an Esri employee now.
I'm a red badge.
You are a red badge. So tell me a little bit about that transition and just your kind of overall experience with being at Esri.
That's an interesting question. It has been a transition. It's been, there's a shift anytime you move from an industry or from one job to another. There's a different climate, there's a different culture, there's a different environment. I shifted out of, the utility sector, moved to work with Esri. I work remotely here in Birmingham, but it's been so interesting because I have all the trains colliding in my head right now, all the thought trains. I've met such amazing people, and not that I didn't work with amazing people before and really creative people, but just the worldwide, the global presence and the global exposure has just kind of blown my mind. I knew Esri was in, countries around the world. I knew we had employees here from all over the place, but actually getting to talk to them and getting to interact with them, that has been just an incredible experience. And they're so smart, just everybody I've encountered in Redlands or at a conference as far as Esri people have just been they've been really interesting. They've been really good as far as me coming on and being new. They've been very welcoming. But I've had such interesting conversations, not just for the podcast, but outside of the podcast. It's been a difference in climate because, when you're in the utility or even when I was at EMA, there was just different things that you focused on. So coming to the Esri space, I'm, focusing my efforts in a different area. I'm trying to look at customers and looking at the customer applications for GIS and make sure how can I convey that, to the team? How can we share that effectively with the rest of the team? And so just having that mind shift of moving, because I was a supervisor as well at the power company and I'm not here. And so moving out of that supervisor role into just, a worker bee role, but still having an influence from a leadership perspective, because I do have industry knowledge that people find valuable. I don't know, I'm rambling. It's been a great experience overall, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And it's been very eye-opening for me in a lot of different areas in a lot of different ways. So I'm loving it. I'm having the time of my life. I've lived as a geography person and a GIS person, always thinking about how amazing it would be to be at Esri, but never thinking that I really was, good enough, warranted. Would I ever, live up to being able to be at the mothership that is Esri? And so it's a little bit surreal. I kind of, like you've mentioned in your podcast, I think, I wake up every day and kind of pinch myself. I'm working for Esri. Like, I work for Jack. How amazing is this, So I've had to, rein in my fangirl energy. But it's been incredible, too, to be able to take the customer experience and share that with the team, because I've been surprised at how much they want that and how much they would like to know more and how engaged they are when they can have those conversations and learn more about how customers are using the software that they're building. They're behind the keyboards, they're punching the buttons, but they don't always get to see how the users use it. And so getting to have those conversations with them has been super, super fun.
It is. And it's so amazing to see the work that people are doing around the world.
Absolutely.
And some with very little resources.
Yeah.
They're doing it on a shoestring budget, and they're doing amazing work.
With like 1.5 people maybe or something, just not a big team. It's crazy.
I'm going to continually ask you.
Okay.
Because that's probably one of the things that I love most about being here is seeing the work being done around the world and getting engaged with all those beautiful people, just making a difference. I think that's a very common thread, is that we all want to make a difference. You're just making a difference now on a little bit bigger stage.
That's what I was thinking too, is just my exposure to how people are utilizing and using GIS has gone from a state level to a worldwide level, essentially, because I can, have the opportunities to talk to people not only from my state, but the rest of the U.S. and around the world. I mean, as we've shown in this podcast. And so for me, just being able to have that experience and be able to see those things and learn more about it, I don't know, it has been inspiring for me. It has revamped and rekindled my creativity, I have to say. It has really just, I don't know, it's kind of relit the fire that I have for GIS and geography in general. So I'm sure you guys have picked up on, how excited I've been to talk to everybody on the podcast, and just my passion, because I do love geography and I love GIS and I love what it can do and the applications for it and how it's never ending what we can use it on. We're only limited by our creativity, really. So I love that about it, and I love being able to champion that and share it. So
you love people. You're focused on the technology, but your real strength is the people adapting the technology, and I think that's why you're so good to host this podcast.
Well, thanks.
I appreciate it.
I don't normally think of myself as being a people person, but I have really enjoyed having the conversations and just being able to make them feel comfortable and how to use it better, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. But we don't have a whole lot on the people, and who are the people behind the keyboards, behind the mouses, behind, clicking the buttons. Who are the people doing all of that? I guess it's mice, isn't it? I just had a moment.
I want Mises in my head.
Mises, I know, yeah. We're so dumb.
Mises in the pieces.
Oh my gosh. You got me so flustered. Just the people are just so important, because they're the ones that are the creative genius. They're the ones pushing this technology. They're the ones figuring out how to make it shine, how to make it sing, how to do the incredible work that we all love to see. I mean, we've talked about the map gallery all season, with this podcast. The people that are working on that stuff back in the offices, their stories are important, and it's important to know how they made it here and how they got to where they are. So I don't know, I'm going to get off my soapbox, but it just excites me.
I wish you didn't get off your soapbox. Let's just stay there.
Just stay on there.
And let's keep talking about the user conference.
Okay.
The Esri International User Conference. You heard the map gallery resonate over and over. Definitely one of my favorite parts, along with the paper sessions. What are your favorite parts of the conference, and what advice do you have for that first-time attendee going?
So one of my favorite things about the conference is, and you're going to laugh at me when I say it, I love Jack's message at the plenary. I know it's ridiculous and I sound like a fangirl, but he inspires me. He fires me up. I love to go. I want to sit there and I want to soak it in. It is like I don't know, it's like Superman in the sun for me when I go in there and I get to hear him and he speaks and he's talking about all the things that we're doing and all the places we're headed for the technology. Now it's we're headed, not y'all are headed. Now it's we are headed. I'm so excited because this year would be my first UC and my first plenary as an Esri employee, and so I just hit his talk at the very beginning. Do not miss it if you've never been. Don't skip it. I've heard some people talk about that they mosey in kind of later or whatever, and I'm there in the seat with bated breath, committed. Don't distract me. I want to soak it all in. I'm ridiculous. But it fires me up, not just for the week, but it carries me through, because I'll think back on what did Jack talk about during the plenary? What are the things that are important from his point of view and perspective. Because if he's putting them up on a slide, that's something that's resonated with him. That's something either somebody at a customer has created that really checked the box for him as far as that was super cool. Mm-hmm. It's something that's moving forward with the technology that he's excited about. It's something from a conceptual standpoint, just so many different areas that he covers. He talks a lot. I mean, he covers a lot of ground during the plenary. And he has amazing guests come in too. I mean, some of his guests that he has just absolutely will, fire you up to go run to, Africa and go participate in whatever it is. He just has some really cool people. So my advice first would be don't miss that. Mm-hmm. Go and soak it in and pay attention and don't let people distract you. But the other thing I do love is the map gallery. I love going and seeing the works. And the map gallery, when everyone's in there too, where you get to speak to the people and you get to chat with them about their map. Going back to the people thing, I do like talking to people about their map. And I like taking people who've never been and who get to have that experience for the first time and show them and escort them and kind of explain to them what's going on, particularly if they're not a GIS person, by training or by education or whatever. If we have, when I was at the power company, if we had engineers going with us or managers or something, I always wanted to make sure they were comfortable with the map library, because that's a really good opportunity for them to see so many different ways and use cases for GIS outside of the utility space, outside of whatever space they work in. I love the map gallery. And then, I do love the paper sessions too, because I like seeing what people are doing. And whenever I would go, I would always go to sessions that weren't in my, what am I trying to say? My field, my track. Yeah, my track. So I didn't necessarily go to all utilities when I was going as a utility customer. I went to the emergency management papers. I would go to the education papers. I would go to whatever, just fill in the blank. I went to anything that sounded like it was interesting to me and could be applicable potentially when I got back to the office, because I wanted to go and see what other people were doing in these other areas. I wanted to see how they were using field maps for their use cases. I wanted to see how they were using whatever it was, if it was dashboards or ArcGIS indoors or whatever they were doing with it, because I wanted to be thinking, okay, if they did that over there, how can I apply that here? How could I use that back at the office? What could we do with that? And sometimes seeing it applied by a group resonates better than just seeing the commercial for it or seeing the promo for it or reading the white paper about it or reading, all those things are important. We post a lot about the utility network in blogs. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of blogs out there, for instance, for the utility network. But going to those sessions, and I know I circle back to utilities, but going to those sessions and seeing how people are utilizing it or seeing their success stories or seeing where they're having, hang-ups with it. And then you can talk to them and you can look about, okay, when I start going down this path, let's try to bypass, that hurdle that they had to clear if possible. Let's figure out how to do that more smoothly for us. And then what worked well for them, let's see if we can implement that, And so whether that's in your field, if that's in your track or not, it's so helpful to go and see how people actually really implemented it in their systems. Because again, it takes me back to everything works perfectly when you guys demo it, Things work perfectly when we go and we watch, but it doesn't always work the same way when we sit down at our computers to do it. Mm-hmm. So when you can see how someone has implemented it, how they have made it work, how they've gotten it to work for them, that gives you a little bit of confidence too. It's like, okay, that utility or that, engineering group or that, fill in the blank group, they were able to get it to work. Maybe I can too, Something, it feels to me less daunting when I can go and observe people presenting about it, hear their story, and then talk to them afterwards. So yeah, I don't know if I covered all the ground. I covered a lot of ground. Did I answer your question?
Just a reference,
yes.
Your Africa reference. That was the Archivango.
Well, that was one of them.
Project.
Yeah,
National Geographic.
That was one of them. But they also a few years ago too. They had the people come in from the national park where they were saving the elephants, and I was like, I'm packing my bags and I'm gonna meet y'all in Africa, next week. Here I go. So they're very inspiring.
They do amazing work. Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity to be in Dubai just a year before COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to see some of the work going on in Africa. And they were beautiful people doing beautiful projects. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Jane Goodall was there one year.
Yeah.
You know, like let me go get in line for that. For
Yeah,
absolutely. E.O. Wilson was there one year. So when I was at Alabama, we did a lot of studies with him, you know, about him and case studies and things like that. So that was exciting. Jack just brings in, you know, he brings in amazing people. So it's super cool.
I'm gonna tell you, I'm excited that this is your first year, because you get to see the level of effort that goes into that show.
I've heard about it, and it sounds insane. So it sounds, you know, I mean, Esri puts so much effort and energy into any of the conferences. You heard from Jess Altamira on the podcast earlier in the season. She's, you know, she went to the Fed conference and presented. She's presenting for the partner conference, and she's prepping for that. You know,
she'll be on stage at the UC, no doubt.
Absolutely. She's usually on stage for IMGIS as well in the fall. I mean, all of them, there's a lot of effort. And I mean, last year when I was participating and helping for the electric session for IMGIS back in October, I was exposed just a smidge, you know, to what the prep is for it. And the UC, I know, is tenfold, you know, maybe 10,000 fold more. I mean, it's amazing. So when you guys go and you go to the UC and you have your amazing time and it's an incredible experience and you just get so much value out of it, know that Esri puts so much effort and work. And there's tons of people, so many people that go into that, all the way up to Jack. He puts hours and hours,
on his session. That's why he knows it so well. You know, he puts so much detail and care into articulating people's message. It's really it's impressive to see. Hopefully, we'll be on the periphery,
out of the line of fire.
Absolutely. So we've covered some amazing ground. Another passion of yours. What actually brought us here today is your passion for podcasts. You're an avid podcast listener.
I guess I am. I didn't realize it, but I guess I am.
What are some of your favorites, and what do you look for in a podcast?
Okay. So a couple of my favorites that I listen to regularly, you know, Dr. Brene Brown has Dare to Lead. That's a book she's turned into a whole training series, and there's a podcast called Dare to Lead. I listen to that faithfully and, you know, really get a lot out of that one for, you know, just a lot of leadership learning comes from that. I also listen to Simon Sinek. He does a little bit of optimism. Love that one too. I follow it quite a bit. I also listen to Diary of a CEO. I really like seeing kind of how he navigates through his day and how he has these conversations with different people. There's a behind the scenes version, and then the main big podcast. He just has super interesting conversations, and all of them ask questions that are really, unique was the first word I thought of, but I'm not even sure that it's unique, but they spend time crafting questions geared for that person, that are designed around that person. It's not just a batch of questions that they're, using over and over. They really want to get to know the person, what they're working on, the motivations behind them, what makes them tick, not just whether it's a book that they've written or a, product that they have, whatever it is. He really tries to get to know the behind the scenes of that person and what makes them work, what makes them tick, and what processes they go into. So I like that, but I love a podcast that I can learn something from. I don't really tune in. I have a hard time with podcasts. There's Serial. I just couldn't get on Serial. I don't know. I know there's going to be people that come for me with that, but
okay.
It's just not. I don't know. It's just not my game. I have to be able to learn something. I listen to some French podcasts too, which is the nerdiest thing ever, I'm sure. I listen to the Field Notes podcast that
they're amazing.
Our other team does. Like, I love them, Josh
they
and Demaya.
Amazing.
If y'all haven't listened to them, listen to them. So for me in a podcast, I need it to be something I'm going to get something out of. Yeah. I want to learn something from it. It can't be too terribly long. That was one thing I was really passionate and worried about with this, was I just didn't feel like the episodes could be super long. There are some people out there that have 3-hour podcasts, and I'm not here for those. I can't be here that long. My attention span is not where it needs to be. About an hour, and I'm maxed out. So, we had a couple that ran a little bit over an hour, and I was a little bit worried about it here, but
I think they're good though. I think it's important to have these long form conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And we're about to transition to a leadership topic. But I think this is a good transition because you and I definitely see things totally different.
Mm-hmm.
And when the idea of the podcast was first floated, I really saw it as just an opportunity to give someone exposure and let them expose themselves,
mm-hmm.
where I'm being maybe a conduit. Maybe I'm navigating the conversation. But what I've seen from you is that focus. I don't know that you always have an expectation of where the conversation is going.
Mm-mm.
But when you do have those conversations, I think they're always worth the journey.
Mm-hmm.
I think every one of these people that were interviewed, I cut very little out because I thought it was all equally important, even when they're kind of navigating through an answer. I thought you did a really good job of blending your approach where you were driven. You did have a vision in mind when you interviewed the prospective person, but you equally let the conversation flow and didn't restrict it. I was a little concerned about short form podcasts. I do like those longer ones because I can almost have them as background noise. I don't pay attention to the whole thing. This was different though. I thought they were great conversations, and I kind of wanted to get your perspective on how you landed there.
Yeah, I like the podcasts that have a little bit of structure to them. I need to know what we're doing, where we're going, and when we get there. I need a little bit of that structure for me. Some of the conversations that you like to listen to, I cannot handle them.
And that's okay.
Because
you don't have to.
I can't have the background noise going. I know there's people who are going to listen to this. My house is silent all the time. It's just me and Legend here. And so other than, people out on the street or something like that, I don't have TV going. I don't have, radio going. I don't have, background noise happening. And so it's just too distracting for me. So to have something like that going, and I'm going to commit my time to it, I need to get something out of it, because otherwise I could be listening to Brene and Simon. So I felt like for other people who were going to tune in, I wanted them to get something out of it. I wanted them to feel okay with spending their time focusing and it not just be a background noise. I had the intent that it would be something people would, maybe they're doing something else while they're listening to me ramble now, and that's okay. But they would listen because I want them to get something out of it. I want them to learn from the guests on the podcast, because every person that we put on here, there was a reason that I picked them. There was a reason that I chose them to be on here and to share their story. Every single one of them had something to offer to our bigger community, to our wider audience. And so I didn't just pick, fun friends and, people that were cool to hang out with. Every single person on here, even the new ones, I talked to them before. If I didn't know them, if you knew them, or if someone else knew them or connected me, or we, ran into and met McKees at the zoo, we talked to them before and kind of felt our way through that to see what might that conversation be. And so everybody in here has something that's valuable and is worth, paying attention and focusing and zeroing in on. So, for something that I'm going to put together, that I'm going to put out there for people, I wanted it to have a little, at least a little bit of structure. I wanted it to, kind of have a goal in mind for what is that podcast doing. I did write questions ahead of time for most people. Some people had more questions written as we went through and did the recordings. I learned as we moved through, and I was able to kind of craft the questions differently. I was able to get a little bit more free and a little bit more creative with what I asked people. And depending on whether I knew them or not, I was able to, of course, come up with questions in a little bit different fashion, a little bit easier. But I really had no trouble. I didn't feel like coming up with questions, whether I knew someone for 2 weeks or 10 years. You know, I was able to come up with things to ask them because I just, like Hussein said, I stayed curious. So I focused on those things and making sure people could get something out of the episode. But I also did want the guests to have the freedom of kind of working their way through some of the questions and kind of finding their path and talking about what they wanted and felt comfortable talking about as well. So I was trying to land in the balance between, we need a little bit of structure, we need to try to figure out where we're going and make sure we land there, but also give them the freedom to talk about their journey however they saw fit and share what they wanted to share. So yeah, that was the thought process behind it.
It was amazing. So in the first episode of this season, you and I had a pretty good conversation on leadership.
We did.
And it was, I thought you asked some very insightful questions.
Well, thank you.
I
put you on the hot seat.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. I always thought that you were an amazing leader of a really bright GIS team at the power company.
They are sharp. They're still there. We talk about them like something's happened, but they're there and they're sharp.
They're there and they're still bright.
Doing their thing, yes. Mm-hmm.
But, you know,
They have a new amazing leader now.
They do. Mm-hmm. My style of leadership was to put the best people in the best position to succeed, and then I would pick up everything else. Mm-hmm. You grew people to be the best to succeed. You mentored and you spent a lot of time on what we called in the first podcast traditional leadership. Mm-hmm. Can you share your insights into the work and effort that went into that? What were your secrets, Mel?
I don't know that I had any secrets per se. I did do a lot of reading and research and study. I tried to learn as much as I could. The foundation of it is just I wanted to treat people well. I wanted to make sure that they came into work happy to do the work and do the job and be on the team. I wanted them to feel fulfilled. I wanted them to, not dread getting out of bed every day. I wanted them to, enjoy what they did. But I also wanted them to feel challenged and to grow and to not stagnate in anything that they were working on. I wanted them to build upon the skills that they had. And I depending on what phase and what stage, I had varying numbers of people. I had varying levels of expertise. So I had some really experienced people at different times, and then I had kind of younger people that came in. I had a student intern who was great and amazing, and we ended up hiring her. And I had some other people that, we had contract workers who kind of came in and left, and they were great depending on what project they were working on. But I just always wanted people to feel like they had a safe space when they worked with me. I never really thought of them working for me. I always thought of them working with me, and me working with them, because they were all sharper than I was. I felt like I always wanted to make sure I had people who were smarter than me, because I needed them to do a lot of this, a lot of the heavy lifting. I wanted them to have their opportunity to shine, because I felt like I really had my opportunities to shine when I was at the Alabama EMA. I got to build my GIS muscles there. I got to really, do some incredible things and help people. It was just an amazing time. And so when I moved to the power company and moved into a leadership role, I just saw it as my duty, my role, a necessary thing, that the people that were on the team that I was supervising, it was their time to shine. And so I wanted to focus on how can I make them and help them do well and be successful in their careers. So I didn't take the same approach as you did. I did talk to people to figure out what they were good at. I didn't pair them with stuff and put them on things that they just were going to be miserable at. But I did try to look and see, okay, where are some growth opportunities? Where can we work on some things? And how do I set these people up for success, but also give them the freedom to fail? And if they needed to have a couple of goes at something, that's okay, because we're going to be okay, and we're going to look at it together. And you're not going to be you're not going to be ostracized because it didn't work out. This is an experimentation. We're trying to figure this out. We're building something new. We're going through a new process, whatever it was. So I wanted them to always be free to fail, and fail early and fail often and try again, and it's that's okay. I wanted to build skills in them too, as far as how to work in our environment, because different environments are different. Working in a utility is not the same as working in, at EMA or the military or, a lab or, whatever. I mean, it's just different. And so building up experiences and interactions, and how do you work with this group over here versus that group over there, because they're all going to have their kind of unique personalities. How do you interact with them? What's a good process for keeping people updated on progress? Little things like that come along with new people and young people who may have not had that experience. So I always tried to cultivate that in them. And we did lots of things. We had team building opportunities where we would work together and, learn more about each other. I always loved, I really enjoyed, I'm gonna not personality assessments, but kind of personality assessments, things like strength finders and the DISC assessments, and just all those types of things, because it really helped me understand each individual person on the team and what were their strengths and how could I use those and put them in positions to better succeed at their jobs, and how it really identified too if I had people that didn't always jive the best together, if they weren't, not that anybody necessarily clashed, but if there were consistencies with the communication styles just weren't tracking or whatever. Once I had those analysis and once I knew that those things about the different people, it was clear why some of them didn't always communicate the best. Some of them were highly technical and were very direct and to the point, and while others were, more feelers, they were more empathetic. They really had to kind of process through utilizing their feelings more, and so there was a balance. So being able to identify those things and go, hey, y'all, can we work on these things this way? I was able to guide them a little bit better and made the team stronger as a whole. So I don't know if those are secrets per se, but those are just some of the things that came to mind when you asked that. I just always, every day, I wanted them to feel safe in the workplace, personally, physically, emotionally. I wanted them to feel like they could come to me with whatever the issue was, whether something hadn't worked on an experiment, whether they'd had an issue interacting with a group, or if something didn't go the way they expected, and they did not have to worry that they were going to come back and just be lambasted for it. We would work it out. I would figure it out. I would help them work through that process. So just having them know that I always had their back and I would always support them, that was always important to me.
So through season 1, you put people in the hot seat.
I did.
You did. You asked them questions like, what's their favorite thing?
Mm-hmm.
Or where they see the technology going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've got a sense of that from you over the season.
Probably.
My hot seat question to you is, where do you see this podcast going?
Ooh.
How would you do? So let me break it down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How would you define success for this podcast, and how do you see it evolving as we go into multiple seasons?
I don't have a set, number of views or number of downloads or anything like that would equate to success. I mean, if people are getting excited about it, if we're hearing positive things, if people are enjoying hearing conversations, the conversations with the guest, if the guests are enjoying it and they're having a good time, and we're hearing from people that, either they know someone that would be an amazing guest to have on, or they're wanting to come on the show, I think all of those things would be reflective. I think, when we're at conferences, if people are coming up to us and saying, hey, that's an amazing, that's incredible podcast. I love tuning in. You're having such really good conversations. I think that would be amazing. And, having exposure, just Esri has exposure, you have connections. We're loading this on LinkedIn, posting through LinkedIn. Having people from around the world get to hear from other people around the world, I think, is such a really cool experience and something really neat to be a part of. So, for me, it's just if people are getting excited about it, and if they're excited about the conversations, if people start having, spin-off opportunities, or it gets the creative juices flowing, and, maybe some of the partners start having conversations, or whatever it is, there's lots of ways to define success for this, but mostly are the people who are coming on enjoying having the conversations, and are we hearing good feedback that listeners are enjoying listening? So,
And are they getting lessons learned?
Are they getting lessons learned? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So where do you think it's going to go?
Well, I'm already planning season 2, so I'm hoping that it's going to be, I will use the word success. I hope that people enjoy and have enjoyed listening to the season. I hope, at the time when this runs, it's going to be June. And so I hope that, more and more people start going, hey, I heard about this really cool podcast is going on. You need to check it out. And so more and more people are listening. We'll be coming up into the UC, and so that'll be an amazing opportunity to talk to people when people are there at the UC. I'm already, like I said, I'm already planning season 2. I'm thinking through, the guest. I have some ideas for some really interesting customers that I think would be amazing to have on. I think people would enjoy their stories from, all around. Thinking through, partners. I've got quite a few that I'm thinking about. I have some distributors that I think would be really interesting conversations, and of course some of my Esri friends that I've met. I think that they have a lot to share, and it's a really good opportunity for them too, because some of them don't have the opportunity to post blogs as much, or maybe they don't go to conferences as often, and getting to talk through some things with them I think is great. And then for the ones that do get out there, getting to learn more about them, and not just the stage version of them, or not just the booth version of them, really learning more about, because when you talk to somebody at the booth, you're coming up, I have this problem, here are my lists, here's my checklist, help me fix it, and that's great. That's what you should do. You should absolutely, every time you go to the UC or the Dev Summit or IMGIS, wherever you are, if there's Esri people on site, you need to have your checklist and know what questions you want to ask them to get help on the things you need help with. If you're in a space, where you're hands-on working on stuff, absolutely utilize it for that. But that's not the person. You're not getting to meet the real person. You're getting to meet the developer, the programmer, the ArcGIS Pro expert, the utility network expert, whoever it is. You're getting that version of them. And so I feel like on this podcast we get to see more of the human side of them, as we've mentioned before, and I think that's important too.
I love the culture shining through as well.
Oh, I do too. It's so fun. It's amazing. I did not really plan and think about that. I knew we were, a worldwide company, and I knew I would have opportunities to talk to different people, but I just didn't think about that cultural element shining through the way it has. I knew I would get to talk to people from different countries, but how interesting it has been to get to talk to people from Bahrain and India and Colombia and originally the Netherlands, and it's just so cool. It's just amazing. So,
well, I for one really appreciate it. They've all been interesting.
Good.
And I think you've done a great job hosting.
Thank you so much. I'm excited. I know it's definitely been a labor of love for both of us, for sure, to put it together. But it's been super interesting. I've loved the process, and I'm hoping that we've been able to build it out, and we've kind of gone through the process this time, so we know more about what's going on into it, more about what we're doing a little bit, and can streamline some of it for next season. And we're going to be starting to reach out to people pretty soon for kind of building up that network of folks that we want to bring on. I hope I'm not sounding too what's my word, ostentatious or too
I don't think so at all.
What am I trying to say? Like I'm counting my chickens before they're hatched. I'm Southern. That's my phrase that's coming to mind.
Girl, you might as well just count them, pluck them, and put them in the frying pan. Let's go. I think we've got so many more great stories to tell. Mm-hmm. When you and I first discussed this, I really felt that this could go on all year long.
You did. I just felt like it needed to have some framework, or it needed some guardrails. So, especially getting into it. But, we had a huge list that we came up with of people with interesting stories, mm-hmm. and there's no way they could have fit in a single season. And even still, we were talking about, initially we were thinking 8, maybe 10 episodes, and this is the 15th, 16th, whatever it is. Yeah, so...
So we almost have all the people lined up for season 2. If you start adding, you're going to be adding to a proposed season 3, right?
I know, right? Absolutely, yes.
So what's the best way to reach out to you if somebody does have somebody to add?
Well, I think if it's an Esri internal person, obviously they can find me. You can look me up in email. You can look me up on Teams. Shoot me a note. We can set up a chat. We can talk about it. I think if you're an Esri external and you're someone who knows me, then you know how to get in touch with me, obviously. But if you're not, hit me on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm there. You can message me. We can have a conversation. I think that's probably going to be the best avenue for getting in touch as far as, posting more about this. So, I don't know, or they can always reach out to you as well. So, because you are definitely behind the scenes, and you have a much wider audience than I do for exposure.
I don't think for long. I think that's going to change. So, we've covered a lot of ground. Are there any other thoughts that I might have missed that you'd like to discuss?
That's a good question. This feels like a hot seat question still. I don't know that there's anything that we haven't discussed. I think I just want to reiterate the passion that I have for this, which I hope people pick up on that, but the importance of collecting the stories and the importance of sharing the stories. And every single one of these stories in this list was really important to me to collect. It's almost like, I don't know, I'm thinking about in Harry Potter when they had the
sorting hat?
The globes. They had the globes with everybody's futures foretold.
Oh.
I'm thinking about that. Haley's going to kill me because I can't think of this word. But they had all of the globes with everybody's all the
oracles.
All the oracles. I'm thinking about everybody's stories almost as that, and so we're just having to go in and find and get connected and be able to bring those stories out to share with everybody. That's sort of the visual representation that I have. I just think it's so important to find out what makes our community tick and what's important to them and what are their motivators. What are they, where do they see the technology headed? Because, I mean, everybody had really different thoughts on that too. How much can we learn as Esri by having these types of conversations with people and seeing their perspectives on it? I think that's one of the biggest things. The journeys have been amazing to walk with these amazing guests and these incredible guests, but hearing those perspectives for where they see the technology, for where they see GIS as a science as well, not just as the technology, but the GIS science element of it, where we're headed, it plays into those plenary conversations that Jack does too. It connects in with that. And I feel like if we can connect with the heartbeat of that with our users in our community, I just feel like we're in such a better place as a company as a whole and a community as a whole. So I guess in a way I feel like this is a give back to the GIS space by being able to facilitate exposing these amazing journeys and these amazing conversations, these amazing people to the rest of the GIS community. So I don't know. I guess those are my final thoughts on. I've just loved this so much, and I feel so blessed to be able to do this and have this opportunity and be able to connect with these people this way. It just I don't know. I've just loved it. It's been amazing.
I love your analogy. It really is. All these conversations have been like the prophecies from Harry Potter. And hello, Haley Spivey. How are you?
Yes.
Hi, Haley. They really are. That's a great way to look at it. Everybody has their own perspective, but all those perspectives put together, I think we've seen is what's evolving the technology. People are really driving the engine, and the engine is driving change, across the globe. It's really making a difference.
I just think it's so important and such an important work to do. I don't know. No one else may think that, but I do.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you to all the people who contributed to season 1.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We've appreciated your time and your effort and your focus and your excitement as well, because they were really excited about the opportunity. I mean, I didn't have to twist anybody's arm except maybe yours, but that was only for your picture.
You're going to steal my soul with all the pictures. You know, I think what's going on is equally important to all the technology, all the blogs,
Mm-hmm.
all the sessions.
Mm-hmm.
I think people's journeys need to be documented and be made available. Mm-hmm. And I think these are all amazing experiences. I know that our developers are going to appreciate the stories.
Hope so.
It'll give them insight and understanding into what makes things work out there. Mm-hmm. And I think our community is going to really appreciate it as well. So thank you so much for all of your time this year.
Absolutely.
It's been an amazing season 1.
Thank you as well. You've spent a lot of time with me too.
It was a lot of fun. And definitely, I think you can hedge your bets if you want, but I feel pretty comfortable that we're going to be cranking out a season 2 not long after
Mm-hmm.
the user conference.
I'm planning for this fall. It's my thoughts on it. So stay tuned, everybody, right?
So I just got to keep my foolishness together, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Speaking of guardrails needed and framework, right?
Yeah. No, there's no guardrails in my world.
Absolutely not. So we do really appreciate all the listeners, and thank you all for spending your time with us this season and spending your time with our guest. You know, if there's anybody that you wanted to connect with or that you wanted to get in touch with, I'm sure that reach out to me and we'll see what we need to do to facilitate that. If you have one of the amazing partners that could help you or anybody else in the group, just reach out to me and let me know. But if you have more ideas, reach out to me for that as well. We're definitely interested in anything that anybody has to contribute or suggest.
Well, thanks again
Mm-hmm.
for your work, and that's a wrap, guys.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of season 1.
Season 1 done.
Clap.
Yes.
Oh, I want to clap her so
I
bad.
know. One of the film things, yeah. Please come back next season and join us for more geospatial experiences. Stay mappy, y'all.
So, what an amazing story. What an amazing person. It was so much fun getting to put Mel in the hot seat and just talking about her experiences. I think she is exceptionally well suited to interview people in this podcast. And it's always a lot of fun talking to her. We're really not kidding, where we just have these conversations for hours and hours. Never gets old. So thank you again for this season. And we look forward to getting things started in the fall. So you guys take care.
That wraps up today's episode. Please feel free to reach out with your comments, or if you have an interesting topic that you would like to hear, please let us know. Thanks again for your time, and tune in for our next podcast.